My name is Sitawa Pula. I'm from Kenya, and I will be with you for the next 3 Sundays as we go through African women. Cool. Sorry, I'm back and everything. I have to check common sense. By Sunday 3, I'll have an assistant because that's true. Okay, so let me show you what we'll be going through for the next 3 Sundays. So today we'll do a sort of introduction and we'll ask ourselves, why are theology for and by African women? And then next Sunday, we'll look at that theology. What's African women's theology and who are the theologians? And then the last Sunday, I want us to put it all together and ask ourselves, so all these things we've learned, how can we apply them in our everyday life? Because at the end of the day, I do not want us to be here and just get all this information and then it's just head knowledge. But then the last Sunday, I'd like us to have a sort of interactive session and see how can it be applied in our context. So I'm sorry, I can't chew gum and walk. I need to. So is anyone else other than Anne Claire not hearing me? There is sound. So Anne, could you please check your... Okay, no, she can't hear me.
Could Kimberly check with Anne on the chat feature? Okay, just run the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing else.
Okay. So that's our agenda for the next 3. But I need the key.
Yeah, I just want to minimize.
Put me on, I just want, okay. Not the second one.
Okay.
No, just the first one.
You want to be.
I have, no.
It's gonna take it. You can use it.
Yeah, I'll need to get my. Just click on new message. There's a new message. So.
It's hard to
Okay,
using on the mouse.
Yeah. So people online, I'm sorry, I won't check your messages until certain time. Otherwise, it will be disruptive. Okay. So today we'll, as I said earlier, today we'll be looking at why are theology for and by African women. And we'll start with prayer because as much as we're here to learn, we're also here to learn about God and we need to invite him into this space. So I'll say the Lord's Prayer in Swahili. I'll have the words up in both Swahili and English so that you can follow. And then I'll give an overview. We only have a limited amount of time. So this is not a whole history. Who was born in 1900. So it's just an overview of the continent of Africa, just to give us a geographical and historical foundation for what we'll be discussing for the next 3 weeks. And then we'll also look at religion, both African religions and theology. You'll notice I have those in plural because we come from a very, very big continent. We have over 300 tribes, each with its own culture and beliefs. We can't possibly have one religion and one theology. So I'll try my best to capture some of those. And then lay the foundation of why we are here, which is African women's theology. So I'll talk about the lady who sort of brought people together and say, hey, we need a theology for Africans by African women. So we'll sort of look at her and the circle is called the Circle of Concerned African Women, and that's the sort of entity that brought people together, and that's how the African women's theology came about. So today will just be a lot of background information, but we need this background information so that we can learn about the women and be able to understand, and also so that we're not asking, why did this happen that way? So today I'm answering all the questions I thought you'd have if we went straight to the women. And then there are a couple of things that are out of scope. Again, we have 120 minutes spread out in 3 weeks. So that's 40, 40, 40. We can't cover even one person's life history in 40 minutes. And so there are a couple of things I'll keep saying that's out of scope. Not because it's not important, but if we start, we won't finish. So if I take out of scope, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to say that I have to deal with technology and I have to deal with all these other things. And I want to make sure people go to the second service in time. So I have my sticky notes here. I'll write all the out of scope things and then see what can be incorporated in the next 2 Sundays. And hopefully what I can ask Nicolette to give me another month to do another series on. So that's sort of our quote unquote house rules. We're good? Okay, let's start with prayer. So the Lord's Prayer can be found both in the book of Matthew and Luke. Matthew has the longer version, Luke has the shorter version. So we're doing the longer version that has the doxology. I do not know what that is. Holy God. Sorry, I don't know what that is. Oh, okay. I'm not sure. Okay, let us pray. Maybe the Lord will intervene. Okay. So Baba is Father, Yetu is our. Okay, so let us pray. Baba yetu uliye mbinguni, jina lako litukuzwe, ufalme wako ufike, utakalo lifanyike duniani kama mbinguni. Utupe leo mkate wetu wa kila siku. Samehe makosa yetu kama tunavyowasamehe na sisi walivyotukosea. Usitutie katika kishawishi, lakini utuokoe maovuni, kwa kuwa ufalme ni wako na nguvu na utukufu hata milele. Amina.
Amen.
Okay. So now I want us to do a very small exercise. Just want to test your African knowledge. So appoint someone to be like a secretary for the group. And then, yes, thank you. And then the people online, you can be one group. You can put your comments in the chat and discuss amongst yourselves. So it's just 3 questions, 3 simple questions.
Stupid.
Oh, wow.
Somebody else is in.
I do scribe.
Okay, every table, do you have a secretary, spokesperson, a pen, and a keeper, right? Okay. Question number 1, in your group, how many African countries can you list? And you have to list them. Online, you can do as a group. Just put all the African countries you can in the chat. You can join a group. And no checking your phone.
I have that issue. We could use yellow. We'd say BOT as extra
But VAT and got it.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question, but you can still add to that one. So the next sticky notes, African cities, major cities, not a mini town that you visited in the middle of nowhere, because we have one of those. So capital cities, major cities across Africa. Your phone is not your friend.
My friend.
I think I give bonus points for that one.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last question, you can still continue with the other two, is what characteristics do you think African religions have? So anything you can think about. So African religion, tribal. She said tribal, she shouted something. So African religions, characteristics, what do you think, whatever comes to mind, characteristics of African religions.
I think there's tradition, singing tradition. Yeah. Harmonious. I think tradition. I think ritual, ceremony. Biblically. I think there, yeah, and I think there's also a lot of rites of passage. They celebrate.
Okay, again, because we only have 40 minutes, I'm sorry to rush you. We have so many things to go through. I would like to hear from your groups. So your spokesperson will just go through. We'll start with question number one, just read them out. Number two, so I'll just call out the question and then we see what your groups have come up with. I won't tell you if you're right or wrong because the slides will tell you if you're right or wrong. Okay, I'll start here. African countries, you're cheating because you're still right. Sorry. Country.
Want all of them, but we got.
Yes.
Should the rest of us mark off whatever she says?
Oh.
The slide will let you know, because she might say something that
It's wrong. Botswana, Zimbabwe, Burundi, Ghana, Rwanda, South Africa, Lesotho, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Algeria, Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, Somalia, Eswatini, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Central African Republic, Mauritania, Chad, Mozambique, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Western Sahara, and we ran out of time.
Very good.
Okay, at the back,
Same as we had.
at the back.
Oh, I think the only thing that I didn't hear, we have Niger, Morocco, Tanzania, did you say that?
We did not.
Okay, because I was kind of going through the list. Everything else we have.
Okay, back. Did you have?
Well, there's Jerusalem,
In Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Libya.
The slide will go back.
You want the cities or the country?
Countries.
So we had Egypt, Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Morocco, South Africa, Sudan, Swaziland, Tanzania, Niger, Botswana, Democratic Republic of Chad.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I'm thinking? The only ones that weren't mentioned was, is it Mali? And
Mali.
that, everything else in Egypt, I think I heard Egypt, not sure, but everything else was mentioned.
Okay.
The only thing we're not sure is mentioned was Burkina Faso. Otherwise, Libya, Morocco was it, Libya?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have.
I totally lost track of what was in China. Yes, which would have been the
Mozambique, Ghana, South Africa, Liberia, Lesotho, Botswana, Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, Egypt, Chad, Nigeria, Senegal, Zimbabwe, Gambia, Namibia, Kenya, Gambia.
Yeah, it's a side. I do this because it's over. Let me do the slides. It's over here.
yeah, that's
all the good slides we have. So we hold on the cities and African religion. Again, if I look like I'm rushing, I am trying to keep up with my slides. So this is Africa pre-colonial times. And this is a map that shows empires and kingdoms of Africa. Why I share this is because as we start talking about the African women theology, there was a sort of divide between, do we go back to how we were before colonization, or do we take pre-colonization stuff that we used to do and we're all about and mix it with colonial stuff and then come up with a new thing? Or do we abandon pre-colonial, colonial, and come up with a totally new thing? So that's why we are starting from here, just in case I say pre-colonial and you're wondering what pre-colonial Africa looks like. So it was all about kingdoms and chiefdoms. Again, it depends with the tribes and how mighty and big they were. And I want to show a short video from BBC.
1924, the city of Cairo was taken by storm by one of the most awe-inspiring sights its citizens had ever seen. Marching through its winding streets was an entourage of thousands of
I'll share this later. It's about
scholars and slaves.
the guy. Everything is not working today. This will be online, so it will be uploaded to the forum and the video will play and you'll be able to listen to it. So this is about Mali. So Mali had one of the richest guys in the world. And this video by BBC shows that if his wealth was converted to today with inflation and everything, he'd be richer than the Amazon guy. What's his name? Yeah, and they mentioned, I think Bill Gates or someone. So if his wealth was sort of converted to where we are at today, that's how rich he was. His kingdom ran from Mali, if I can go backwards. So from Mali all the way to Egypt. So that's how vast it was. And he was a Muslim. Again, that's out of scope for us because then if we get to spread of Christianity, spread of Islam, we'll go and go and go. So I just want us to stay closer to home. But again, I can come back and talk about this thing.
What was this riches found in? Was it oil or was it?
That's why I have this map, just to show you all the resources natural resources in Africa. So for his kingdom, it was mostly gold. And this is a map of Africa now post-colonial, because now the countries have, the states have been divided into countries, and they were divided based on the countries, the European countries that colonized. So all this was British territory, all this was French territory. We have the Portuguese down there, more British, Belgians, and the Spanish. And so most of Africans have like 3 languages that they speak. So they have languages based on these people. So I speak English because I'm on the Anglophone. This is Kenya. So I'm on the, we call them Anglophone, English speaking. So Anglophone, and then these are Francophone because they speak English. French, French. And then German's influence in Tanzania, I wouldn't say it's that strong because even Rwanda, they speak more French. They're more Francophone than, I don't know what we call German. It's German speak. Okay. Yeah. So again, I showed this so that when I say colonial, this is what I'm talking about. So we have pre-colonial, what governance and self-governance looks like. We have colonial, and this happened during the Industrial Revolution, and the Europeans, part of their strength and power was based on owning a colony. And so, yeah, these are the various colonies. Colonization is a whole topic of its own, again, out of scope. Not that it's not important, but it needs more time. So this shows independence because it's good news. So pre-colonial, colonization, and now this is what post-colonial, the roots of post-colonial look like. So a lot of countries got independence in the 50s, 60s, 70s, with some exceptions of countries like Egypt in 22, and then even though South Africa got it a little bit earlier, they still had Black South Africans and white South Africans. So check your post-it notes and see which countries you made up in your group. It's not so clear because...
How many countries in all?
53, 54. Yeah, this is an old one because Sudan split in 2010, 2011, and then we have South Sudan and Sudan. Yeah. So
This independence, was it fought by war or were there peaceful terms for independence?
Okay, no, sorry. It wasn't peaceful. It was a lot of wars because then you're taking back your land. And depending on whose news you're listening to, those who fought are called rebels. But then how are you a rebel when you're fighting for your own land? So again, it depends with who's telling the story. So for us, they are our freedom fighters because they gave us back our land, our independence. But then, like in Kenya, you'll hear about the Mau Mau rebels in the forest. But then that's the only place they could organize themselves because if they did it out in public, then the British and those communities in Kenya that were allies of the British would then revolt against them. So if you watch a lot of news about, documentaries again, depending on who is making the documentary, just be very attentive to the language. And then also ask yourself, this story, who is it serving? So is it serving the person who went to someone else's place and took their land and were kicked out? Or is it serving the people who were there initially and people came and took their land and now they're fighting for their land and independence? So watch, it's good to watch, it's good to learn, but then ask yourselves those questions. And those are the questions the women ask themselves, and that's part of how and why the theology came about. They're like, okay, we're cool with being Christians, but then there are things and interpretations that do not serve us. And so do we stop being Christians or do we continue being Christians, but be Christians asking the questions differently? And basically, I believe that's what theology is about. It's about asking those questions about God and what does God say about me and my existence. But then how we ask the questions makes a whole lot of difference. So even as you consume material in the news and anywhere else, consume it, but then also ask yourself, how is this being reported for me as a person in the US versus the people who are actually quote unquote on the ground? Good. Ooh. Okay, so we're good on time. So now we move to religions. Quickly, I just want to hear the feel of African religions. We'll start from here.
Sorry, the religion? Oh, okay. Charismatic, tribal, animist, ancestral, traditions, music, dance, liturgical, respect of elders.
At the back.
We had singing, dancing, robust prayer life, family oriented, kind of long services, longer than an hour maybe, and maybe even like extended prayer vigils.
Okay. At the back.
Oh, well, we had drums. That's one of the things we listed.
Okay.
We had diverse, animistic, tribal, ancient.
Yeah, the front.
All of the above, we also added, they celebrate rites of passage and their ancestors. We noted that there was Catholicism and Lutheran beliefs there as well.
Front.
The only one that has not been mentioned was a connection to nature and seasons.
What did you say?
A connection to nature and seasons.
Oh, yeah.
At the back.
Important.
The other things that we have were just in terms of history and community.
Okay. So before we go to the slides on seasons, most of our names are based on things that are happening. So my surname, which is my dad's name, is Wafula. Wafula means born during the rainy season. And rain is a blessing. So if I can have a blessing yeah, so people are named based on seasons and events, and then also with ancestors, just keeping the lineage going. So I am my dad's great grandmother, named after my dad's great grandmother. So she was Sitawa, but then Wafula is my dad's name. So I'm like his great grandmother. Yeah. Sorry, I was counting pieces there. So that's how naming goes. Again, African naming tradition, out of scope, a whole series on its own.
What does Sitawa mean? Will you tell us that? Or is that out of scope?
Okay, so it means someone or something that brings things together, but not for their own good. So almost like when you think of a marketplace, like an open air market, the existence of the market is for people to come and trade. So I don't have X, I come to the market, I give you something you need, and you give me something that I need. So the presence of the market makes it possible for those things to happen. So the market pulls people together, not necessarily for its own benefit, but for the benefit of the people. Yeah.
So that's what you're seeing.
Yes, in a way, yeah. And speaking of trading, the shelves back in the day, this, like, I would have had bodyguards around me because this is expensive stuff. So back in the day, yeah. So it was one of the things that people used for trading. So curry shells were used before currencies and money came into being. They were used for trading. And so let me not go ahead. So I hope this is legible, but I'll still read it. It's by a guy called John Beatty. He's a Kenyan. He was an Anglican priest. He passed on in 2019, and he's considered the father of modern African theology. I'll explain why the word modern. And he said this: Africans are notoriously religious. Wherever the African is, there is religion. He carries it to the field when he's sowing seeds or harvesting a new crop. He takes it with him to the beer party or to attend a funeral ceremony. And if he is educated, he takes religion with him to the examination room at school or in the university. If he's a politician, he takes it to the House of Parliament. So, just want to point out, if he's educated, sort of tells you this was sort of when colonization was sort of ending, and so people had started going to quote unquote formal spaces of education. I say quote unquote because people still learned without school. It's just that now school brought a certain type of structure that included exams and levels and all those things, but people still learned. And so use of educated doesn't necessarily mean that people were not educated, but it just means that these are the type of people who had to go to quote unquote formal type of education. So we'll see some of these things in the next slide and also talk about the things you mentioned. So one of the things I want to mention is religion, and then in caps the S. In brackets the S, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier on, 3,000 tribes. We can't just have one religion. And so there are people, when they speak, they'll say African religion to say it as an umbrella term for so many other religions in there. And some people will say, use the plural African religions to signify the many religions. And those are differentiated by the cultural system and beliefs that you're part of. And so, fully baked is used because African, traditional, or indigenous is used to mean what was there before people converted to either Christianity or Islam. So those are like the three main religions, and then there are many sub-religions. And people would say there's traditional religions, and then there's Christianity and Islam. And then there are people who say there are three. And then there are people who say, I'm somewhere in between there. And so fully baked means it can stand on its own. It's not a subset. Like we don't have Christianity, Islam, and then a subset that's now indigenous or traditional religions. It is fully baked. It can stand on its own. And then, as some of you mentioned, it's part of African culture and society. So you're born religious, you don't convert. When you become a Christian, you decide to become a Christian. You decide to become a Muslim. You convert to that religion. But African religions, as long as you're born an African, there are those cultures, there are those religions. It's just, are you practicing? How much of the culture are you practicing? So that's on an individual basis. And it's I have it versus Christian nationalism. It's very different from that. So, when you think about here and Christian nationalism, that's sort of, I would say it's almost like an ideology. But then with African religion, it is part of who you are. So because it's part of the culture and society, the naming ceremonies are almost like a religious ceremony. And so you're not going out of your way to do it. It's part of, I need a name because that's how I operate in the world. That's how we operate in the world. And so that's part of our culture and religion. And then it's concerned with everyday life. Again, as John Beatty said, it's in the exam room, it's in the beer party, it's in the parliament. So it's based on all those things. I have this is one of the prayer books I use. It's called An African, someone is clapping at the back. It's called An African Prayer Book by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I might let you pick if you don't read my notes. But if you read some of the prayers, this is a collection of prayers by African tribes across the continent. And if you read a lot of the prayers, you'll see them mentioned in everyday life, like, the harvest, the rain, all those things. So, someone like I was checking my time, we're good. So this shows that the religion is because it's part of your everyday life, then it's concerned with your everyday life. It's seen through the arts, the oral traditions, the proverbs. So we have proverbs and stories that are part of sayings that parents or elders tell us. And so religion is also mixed up in that. And then there's a concept of a supreme being. And I want to share, hope it happens. So this is the creation story for a tribe called the Kuita project that Google did with the National Museums of Kenya. We have over 47 tribes in Kenya, and the Kikuyu is one of the tribes. And so I want to read parts of this creation story, and you think through what it sounds like. The Kikuyu people traditionally believed in a supreme being called Gai. I'm reading at the corner there, who lived on Mount Kenya. So again, nature, someone mentioned nature is part of religion. So Mount Kenya is one of the big mountains in Kenya. The name Gai means one creator god, was borrowed from the Ma language. Ma is short for Maasai language and used by both the Kikuyu and the Kamba. Those are African tribes. The Kikuyu offered prayers and sacrifices to Gai at designated sacred places, such as on top of the hill or mountain under specific trees. Sacrifices were conducted by members of the ruling generation who appointed special priests for occasion as it arose. Think Levites. It's believed that Gai created and put the first man, Gikuyu, and woman, Mumbi, on earth. Traditionally, the Gikuyu trace their origin to this couple. Sound familiar? According to folktales, one day Gai appeared to Gikuyu and allotted him the land at the southwest of Mount Kenya. If you're lost in a minute. He then built a homestead at Mokorowa Nyadaga near Murang'a. This place is considered sacred to the community and filled with wild fig trees. That's a real place in Kenya right now. The couple were blessed with 9 daughters. I won't read the names, but if you ever meet someone from Kenya and they say they're Gikuyu, they're most likely to have one of those names, but no sons. When time came for the daughters to start families of their own, they asked their father, who prayed and offered sacrifice to Gai under a mogumo tree. The next day, they found 9 men. How many of us are single here? Okay, I digress. And they married the 9 Gikuyu daughters. The latter became the ancestors of the 9 Gikuyu clans, 12 tribes, sound like, whose descendants increased in number. Someone got a similar promise somewhere over the years and spread in the Mount Kenya region. So it's easy for people to say, it sounds like a story we've had before. Did the Gikuyu and many other tribes across Africa copy paste and change a couple of things. But then if you really think about the Bible, that's about a certain tribe somewhere that has a creation story. It's only that was documented, went through the canon process and spread through missionaries and all those things. Kikuyu were the center of attention for some certain people. We all wouldn't have single people in this world because they have the strength. I digress. But then, so concept of supreme being is across most African tribes. They believe in a supreme being, and then there are other sub gods based on different things. So there's a rain god, there's a god for fertility, there's a god for different things. And if you've read the Bible and you know all the gods that capital G God was telling the people not to worship, Egypt is in Africa. A lot of people think that Egypt and Africa, like Egypt sounds like it's somewhere else. It is in Africa. And so when you think about Christianity and you wonder how Christianity is or was in Africa, think Egypt and you have an idea. So it's not saying that that's how it was in the whole of Africa, but that has given you an idea of even religion. So all the things that the Egyptians did, all the gods, all those things, it's almost copy-paste for the rest of the continent.
Just a question about Judaism. Is Judaism prevalent in Africa?
There are some people who believe based on that story, the Egypt part of it. So there are Black Jews in Africa, but it's not as major a religion as Islam and Christianity. Yeah.
How about the Messiah stories? Is there a second coming? Do they have those same things as well?
So that goes into play with, what do you call this? The spread of Christianity and also the quote unquote intermarriage. And I have that on the next slide. The sort of intermarriage between Christianity and African religions. So the fact that African religion is more fluid and adaptable, and there's this sort of similarity, so to say, between Christianity and a lot of the religions. So things like believing in the concept of evil. And so we believe in spirits, good and bad spirits. And so if there's this Satan or the evil one as referred to in the Bible, then there's the good one. And so the good one is where now accepting the Messiah comes into play. But within the religions themselves, there's no concept of the Messiah. So God and the gods are responsible for the things. And then there's also, I think that was in the other slide, the concept of intermediaries and the afterlife. So ancestors, the people who've gone before us, are part of our worship and religion. And so I have Hail Mary there because the way we pray, Catholics would say Hail Mary, full of grace, all those, and also calling on the saints. It's almost the same way with the ancestors and looking at ancestors and how they can sort of intervene. So more of ancestors than of a coming Messiah in terms of African religions. But then it was easy to accept that because when you think of a newborn baby, the baby is bringing blessings and it's bringing joy and it's bringing all those things. So it's easy to think about someone coming to do something to make things better for you.
When you spoke historically about the 9 daughters, how is the lineage followed? Is it through the men or the women? That is an interesting concept.
So I will say out of scope, but I'll answer. So there are communities that are patriarchal and there are communities that are matriarchal. So it depends with the tribes. So I have 2 minutes, I think. So so out of scope, but it depends with the tribe. Let's see. Oh, blessings and curses. Again, elders are also very key in. And so someone talked about respect or something of the sort. So that's very key. And then communal affairs. So it's not about personal salvation, which is what mostly things like Christianity are about. So it's about me saving myself. But then this is more community. So we have concepts like Ubuntu, Harambee, Ujamaa. Ujamaa was Tanzania trying to be a socialist. It didn't really work, but that's where they were going with that. Harambee is something we have in Kenya. It's pulling together resources or things that people need. Ubuntu is more from Southern Africa, and it means I am because we are. So I do not exist in isolation. Every decision I make, I'm not just making for myself, but I'm making for the whole entire community. So these are books. If you're interested in learning more about African religions, they're by the guy I spoke about, BT. They're from 65 and 75. So some of it might be outdated, but it gives you an idea of how religions were just as African countries were getting independent. I think we'll stop there, and then next Sunday we'll start with African theologies, and we'll look at different 4 main types of theologies that existed. There are many more, but these are like the main ones. And then we will talk about African women's theology, but I just wanted you to see the face of the lady who, I'll have a bigger picture next time. So the lady who sort of convened and started put things into motion. So just as a recap, I hope as you go home today, you have a better understanding of Africa and historical, geographical. It's not the best understanding, but better than, hopefully better than what you came with. And then also a better understanding of African religions and how they are part of who we are as opposed to an add-on. And then we haven't talked about the foundation. We'll start from African theologies next Sunday. And then, so we'll start from the different types of theologies and then spend a lot of time in talking about African women's theologies and the theologians. And then the last Sunday will be more of almost what we did with the sticky notes.